Thank you. Thank you, Danny and Marion, the whole crew, and Fran. You are, I have to say, what you want in partners as you move forward in the struggles for justice and equality, which is the American tradition and is the tradition of CSEA and is the guiding principle of my office. You want partners who are both organized and passionate, and here at CSEA you got both of those qualities, so I thank you. And I know that you all have, I think you have not just one of the best get-out-the-vote operations we've ever had in the state, but you really have one of the best in the country. We are all relying on you to bring out the vote, to move ahead with a truly progressive agenda for this great state, because the best days are still ahead of us if we seize the moment. So I'm looking forward to campaigning with you over the next 4 weeks, and I know you're also working with my great partner in justice, Controller Tom DiNapoli, who I just did a press conference with yesterday. And for for good Democrats all over the state of New York. Brothers and sisters, I've been standing with CSEA and other allies in labor for my whole career, and it is something that I'm tremendously proud of. And I have to say, the basic idea that if you are the top law enforcement officer in the state of New York, which I am, demanding an honest day's pay for an honest day's work and that everyone plays by the rules and treats their workers fairly is about as basic as you can get to the mission of my office. So when I took office, we decided that, there was a lot of, and 4 years ago, if you reflect back, it was a very different time. We just had the financial crash, and there was a lot of concern that, if you're going after the big institutions, maybe the economy will break down. I have to say, thanks to my education, working in private practice and working as a public interest lawyer and working in that fascinating subject for doctoral dissertations, the New York State Senate, I had learned pretty clearly the difference between spin and economics. And because I understood that, when I came in, we did a couple of things that had never been done before in our office, and we did it together with you. The first thing we did was make a determination that in the new post-crash economy, there were a lot of people who were using hard economic times as an excuse to cut corners, an excuse to cheat workers out of the minimum wage, prevailing wage, to skim tips. There was a lot of that was growing as I came into office. We made a determination that we were going to ratchet up the enforcement by our Labor Bureau to a higher level than it has ever had. We've brought civil and criminal cases, and brothers and sisters, in the last 3 years, we've recovered more than $18 million from more than 14,000 workers. And we have been out on the streets. We have gone after employers who retaliated against people who tried to unionize. We've gotten people their jobs back. We've sent people to jail to send a message when there was really egregious, repetitive behavior. And we are just continuing to build this movement. And the key to these cases is that we have people in unions who speak up, who step forward, who report things. And that's been the key to this partnership. And I have to say also, people in the labor movement understand, even if it is abuse of people who are not in their union, not a union shop, they're still passing it on. And the outreach to people who are not unionized yet that is going on now, that is happening in labor all across the country, whether it's the fast food workers or the car wash workers or others, that is adding power to the movement. But everyone deserves a fair day's pay for a fair day's work, and we have zero tolerance for people who want to pretend it's a smart business practice to steal workers' money. Now, the second thing I want to mention is something that comes back to my partnership with the state controller. I'm a strong believer, and you all are my partners in working in government, that government is a force for good. I believe in public sector action as a force for good. So does everybody else, by the way. All these people who are all into privatization, you ask them if they want to privatize the police and the firefighters and road maintenance and everything. they don't believe in the public sector, but they're the ones who come running the fastest when they need help and they're in trouble. So I realized that there was a lot of there were a lot of people giving all of us a bad name. There was a lot of corruption and fraud going on by those in government, but also a lot in contracts that are given out to other people who are supposed to carry out services for the government. We give out tens of millions of dollars a year in government contracts for firms that we really weren't monitoring. Waste hauling, food services for schools, road paving. So when I came in, we set up, for the first time ever, a unit of lawyers dedicated to policing all this stuff that's outsourced that hadn't been policed before. And we've recovered hundreds of millions of dollars, and we've shut down a lot of bad actions. And then we realized that we could do more and do better for all of you if we overcame the political competition that sometimes separates elected officials. And Controller DiNapoli and I did something no controller or attorney general have ever done before. We entered into a joint executive order so that his auditors that are always looking at the expenditures of state funds and my investigators and lawyers now are one team. We're all covered by the same privilege. We work together seamlessly. We have brought dozens of cases and recovered millions of dollars and sent people to prison who are corrupt officials or their cronies, because brothers and sisters, those of us who are arguing the public sector is a force for good, we have to be the toughest critics of the people who make everyone look bad. We have to be the toughest critics of corruption and fraud in government, and Controller DiNapoli and I are making that a reality across the state of New York. And I will say this, that I love collaboration. I love the idea of union. The idea of union is we are stronger when we're together. And I think it is a time for you also to demand that public officials work together to further the public good. And I think what Tommy and I have done has been a good example. We need to see more of that in public life. In Washington, they have total gridlock caused by the extremism of the Tea Party movement. That means we have to be smarter and better and tougher at the state level than we've ever been. We have to fill in the gaps left by the failures in Washington. I recognize that, the Controller recognizes that, and we are doing that every day. The biggest example of that, and something that I'm very proud of and something that would never have happened without the support I got from my brothers and sisters in labor, is that when I first became Attorney General, and I think the video is reflecting this, believe it or not, there was a deal on the table, this is January 2011, to let all of the banks whose sale of bad mortgages and bad mortgage-backed securities had brought about the worst crash since the Great Depression. I mean, this was not, ladies and gentlemen, because of a hurricane. Some of them say, oh, this is a perfect storm. Yeah, this was not a perfect storm. This was greed, right? This was a perfect storm of reckless deregulation by the Bush administration and greed by a small number of people in financial services. And when I took office, there was a deal on the table that all the AGs had signed off on and that the Federal Justice Department and HUD had signed off on that would have let the banks get away for pretty much pocket change. So I alone, among all the state AGs, even though I was brand new, said, I'm not going to do this deal. And part of the story that doesn't always get told is, when I went to Washington to first confront them, fortunately, I had also scheduled meetings with Rich Trumka and with people in different international unions, with AFSCME, with SEIU. And every time someone in Justice or HUD told me, you got to sign this deal, someone in Labor said, do not sign this deal. You are right. This is a bad deal. And I stood up, Labor stood up with me, and one by one, other attorneys general, housing groups, and other people stood up and said, no, we're not going to let these guys get away with this. Because if you will recall, they were trying at that time to rewrite history. Remember, it's like, oh, we've got, in the United States, we have a spending problem. We're spending too much on public employees and their pensions. That's why we have a fiscal crisis. I have investigated the cause of the crash of the American economy in 2008. There was not one public employee in any of those back rooms doing the deals that brought down the American economy. This was nothing to do with spending too much on the public sector. And to say that people who have worked hard with the understanding that they would have pensions to retire with dignity, that they have to give something up because the bankers blew up our economy, to me is disgraceful, is unacceptable, and something that I will fight against for the rest of my life in public work. So thanks to you and the great coalition that we built, we managed to change the minds of those who were at the first unwilling. January 2012, to his credit, the President set up this unprecedented working group to investigate the causes of the crash. And ladies and gentlemen, you have read about these record settlements. JP Morgan Chase, $13 billion. Citibank, Bank of America, who had the bad fortune to buy Countrywide, which was selling the worst mortgages in the country. Bank of America, $16.65 billion. These are the largest settlements in American history. Overall, we've recovered about $60 billion so far for men and women across America and for our state governments. And more than $4 billion of that is coming to people in New York. And as you can see, we're trying to use the money to make sure it gets to the people who were hurt by the crash. People who were told it's safe to put your wealth and the equity in your home. Those people were lied to and those people were hurt. And as a result of this work that we've done, we are funding 90 housing counseling and legal services agencies all across the state. As a result, New York homeowners are taking advantage more easily of bank programs to modify mortgages because they have lawyers and housing counselors. We have already helped 35,000 families with that program that just started really at the very end of 2012. We also are funding land banks so that communities that were hurt, even if you saved your home, if you're in between two abandoned properties, you got a problem. And so we're now funding local governments to take over those abandoned properties, rehab them, and that's something that over the next 2 or 3 years is going to transform communities all over the state. We also have delivered, and I note this for you, because of the funds we have recovered from banks and because of funds that the Division of Financial Services has recovered from banks, there is a nice surplus sitting in Albany as we come into the next fiscal year. And I'm not going to comment on specifics of ongoing investigations, but we've settled with 3 banks, and I think you all can count. There are more banks out there to come. So I promise you, as your Attorney General, I'm going to ensure that people are going to be held accountable no matter how rich or powerful they may be. If they're a public official, if they're a huge financial institution, I believe that everyone deserves a fair shot, but everyone has to pay their fair share, and there must be one set of rules for everyone. That is my guiding principle. And together, we can bring the rest of the state and the rest of the country back to that basic American vision. Don't let people tell you the Founding Fathers' idea was that it's every man for himself. No, the American tradition is we get together. We, the people, unite. What is the first line of the Constitution? In order to form a more perfect union. That is the principle of the Constitution of the United States. We, the people, in order to form a more perfect union. That is what we're doing here. So with your support and your understanding that we do need to be together, and with leaders in state government that are going to be with you every step of the way and be ahead of the game when it comes to looking at other states, we are leading the nation in a lot of different areas. We have no choice but to lead. New York has been a leader for much of our history on issues like child safety laws, labor laws, food and drug laws. We had the Securities Act in 12 years before the federal government to protect investors. We have to lead again. Brothers and sisters, we have to show what a smart, progressive state where everyone gets a fair day's work, pay for a fair day's work, where the rules are enforced equally, regardless of wealth or power, what that kind of state can look like. Because people will want to live in a state like that. People will want to come in a state like that. And all of us rising together are going to be able to set an example for the country. I'm with you every step of the way, and for the next 4 weeks, I'm going to literally be with you. Every step you take, every door you knock on, every leaflet you hand out is helping bring us closer to that ideal. I thank you for your support, and I look forward to working with you as long as the people of the state of New York will have me do it.